give you the right to have an insurrection, and yet Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15 gives Congress the power to call forth the militias from the states in order to suppress insurrections. Check out the Treason Clause, which says this is the only place in the Constitution where a crime is defined in the Constitution. Treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. Is it possible that the Second Amendment gives you the right to levy war against the Union, and yet it is treason under the Constitution to do so? So one of those interpretations doesn't make sense. Here's the Republican Guarantee Clause. The U.S. shall guarantee to every state in the Union a Republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion and against domestic violence. Now, is it possible the Second Amendment gives you the right to wage domestic violence against the government, and yet the U.S., under the Republican Guarantee Clause, must guarantee to the people of the states protection against domestic violence? And that provision was adopted very specifically in the framers' reaction to Shays' Rebellion, where the founders said that the republic can't work if everybody thinks they can have a violent rebellion every time they disagree with the decision of elected leadership. And I could give you several more, but let me just show you this one. This is my favorite, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which says basically that nobody who's elected to office and swears an oath to support or defend and uphold the Constitution, who violates that oath because they've engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the Constitution, shall never be allowed to hold federal or state office again. So how is it possible that all of my colleagues are saying that the meaning of the Second Amendment is you've got a right to overthrow the government if you think it's acting tyrannically, and yet that's the explicit reason for barring people from ever holding federal or state office again? Now, against all of this authority, they read in invisible ink a provision into the Second Amendment, which simply says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. A well-regulated militia. Well, what does that mean? Look at Article 1, Section 8, Clause 16. Congress shall have power to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states, respectively, the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. So, no, the Proud Boys are not the militia. The Oath Keepers are not the militia. The Ku Klux Klan is not the militia. The militia is a well-regulated militia, which the Supreme Court has repeatedly said means well-regulated by the government. So I think this is the central mythology and fraudulent dogma of the NRA and today the GOP, which needs to be exploded. The reason that they say we can't have a universal violent criminal background check endorsed by 90% of the American people, the reason why we can't have a ban on AR-15 assault weapons used against our people in schools and Walmarts and churches and grocery stores is because they've got a right to overthrow the government. No, you don't have a right to overthrow the government in America. And when I point this out to them, and my colleagues have seen this in the Oversight Committee or the Judiciary Committee, they only have two things to say. One, they say, well, Patrick Henry said, give me liberty or give me death, which was a great slogan during the American Revolution. It's not in the Constitution, of course. And in any event, Patrick Henry was an anti-federalist who voted against the Constitution. So why should we turn to him to interpret the meaning of all of these provisions in the Constitution? And then they say, finally, and this has more surface plausibility, well, what about the American Revolution itself, the Declaration of Independence, which says, when in the course of human events the government turns tyrannical, and you've got a power to break away from it. Absolutely right, you do. Thomas Jefferson wrote those words, but he didn't cite the British Constitution or the Magna Carta for that. He invoked natural law. Everybody has under natural law a natural right to rebel against tyrants and oppressors. But if you think, for example, the 2020 presidential election was an exercise in tyranny, like what King George and the Parliament were doing against the colonists, and you want to overthrow the government, well, you've got the natural right to try and do it. But if our officers, through their bravery, and our leaders are able to stop you, then you're going to be arrested and you're going to be prosecuted. And like Stuart Rhodes, the Yale Law School graduate, head of the Oath Keepers, you're going to go to jail for 19 years because you don't have a right under our Constitution to overthrow our Constitution. If you think you want to step outside the Constitution and the rule of law and try and do it, well, you can try and do that, but at that point you're setting yourself at war against the Constitution. So this is all about us restoring the rule of law in America. And now I yield to my friend, the great Maxwell Frost from Florida, who's been organizing around this for a long time. Mr. Frost, you are recognized for your opening statement.